Hi there. For today's page, I am going all the way back to Easter, to this great photo of the kids dyeing Easter eggs. My stepdaughter took the photo, and I've been wanting to do something with it. I just couldn't quite figure out the page until I was going through my stash of stuff, and I came across these little ovals that I had colored several months ago for another, or well, a couple of months ago for another page, and they didn't work out. And I thought these are perfect for the Easter page, and I'll talk more about where they came from and how they got to be their color in a little bit. So I designed the page around having a row of those, and when I lay out the ones I have, they come out to be 7.5 inches. So my original thought was to do a band coming down of 7.5 inches wide, but that seemed awfully linear and regimented for a page about kids having fun dyeing Easter eggs. So I split the band, and I took the top piece and I put it over to the side, and the bottom piece and put it a little bit over to the side so that it has a little more movement to it. And I'm going to add some misting on the top when it's done, or actually some droplets of ink on the top when it's done. So we'll have the photo, and we'll have a bunch of different papers. The papers are actually going to end up being seamed, and so it's going to be kind of a patchwork of the 6x6 pad, because these were the papers that I originally dyed these little, or painted these little pieces of chipboard to go with from my mind's eye. And I used this the other day on a layout. In fact, that's how I ended up with those little circles, was for the same project. And I just love these papers. I think they're wonderful, and they're perfect for this particular layout on Easter, because I don't have any Easter product. I don't have any specific stamp sets on Easter, or any papers. I buy very little holiday specific paper. So I had to come up with ways to make it look like Easter without having those items. So I'm using the color scheme. I'm using those little ovals to be kind of like eggs, and I have some other trim and things and lots of different lettering options that will go with my colors. I do have some stamps that came as part of a really large set. I bought these really inexpensively several years ago from A.C. Moore, and they're great images. I just think that I think they were originally large images, and they shrunk them down for this specialty set. They didn't keep the proportions all that great, so I've got a little tiny bunny and a bird that's almost as big as the rabbit, and some odd things here, but you can use some of these together in creating some images. I've done it on a card before, and I think that I can do that here as well to add a little bit of an Easter kind of look to this page. So I'm starting with some Echo Park background paper, and I'm going to use these other papers to create my sections here.
So I'm just selecting my papers out of the 6x6 pad. The blue there isn't going to really go with my background, but picking lots of other choices, staying away from the florals and using mostly the geometrics. Now I had picked these papers before when I was going to originally doing these little ovals, and I had paint colors for them. I'm also going to use some gesso on them and some watercolor. Where these little chipboard pieces came from is they are out of letters like the middle of an A or an O or a D. Some of them even have kind of a part cut off the side of them. If you will, they're kind of like donut holes. They're the parts that came out that you wouldn't normally use. And what I'm going to do is paint them and use them and put some glaze on them and use them then as embellishment. So the first thing I have to do is add some gesso to some of these, because some of them had a coating already on them, and if I'm going to add other things to them, I need to give them a primer. Some of them I just painted directly over the chipboard with acrylic paint, which works great, and then I'm going to add that Faber-Castell glaze to the top. The ones that I had the gesso on, I'm using a technique from 2P's art class, and there's more information on it in that class, where you use watercolors over gesso, and it makes a beautiful finish. It's really rustic kind of looking, and I think it's great for this concept, even though it wasn't the original plan, but it's going to work out great for the Easter egg look. So I'm just putting here lots of colors that work with these papers. And then, as I say, I'm adding some of the Faber-Castell glaze. This makes a wonderful shiny surface. Now I'm ready to start pulling some papers together here, trying to decide for sure on the background. That bluish background was a little bit busy with the polka dots. I've tried white and ivory, which is really almost a light yellow. The white is my choice. That way I can use the blue-green papers and have more of a selection of papers and colors. I am going to have to pair my papers up since they're 6 inches wide and I need a 7.5 inch area covered. I'm looking at my title though, and the letter E I need in dyeing. When you are dyeing eggs or dyeing fabric or whatever, it has an E in it. I didn't realize that till I checked my spelling, and I'm glad I did, or I would have had my eggs dying like something not living anymore as opposed to being correct. And what I've had to do here with these foam glitter thickers is manipulate one of them around to turn it into an E. I don't know if this is the best looking E or not, but since I had the shadow of the E on the paper there, I had something to go by to get an idea of what would make an attractive E for this set. And it's going to be a little bit large, but because they're the foam thickers, you can manipulate them some. And I was really had my heart set on that particular stamp set. Picking some background papers. That one's too dark. The stripe is my favorite. I love that. And there's going to be quite a bit of this paper. It's the largest amount is what goes behind the words. And I'm just organizing them so that they'll be like a 3-inch piece and a 4.5-inch piece, and I want them to alternate, kind of like bricks in a wall. I'll also need some papers on the bottom and on the top for those sections. I've got all my papers picked out and cut here, and I'm ready to transfer them over to the background. I got out my basic gray magnetic mat. I haven't used it in quite a while, but it's perfect for this project, using the ruler there to line everything up. Just trimming down my pieces and gluing them to some textured white cardstock. Now my intention was to sew all those seams to go in, and I thought after I got all this on there, that's going to be a lot of stitching. It's going to get awfully busy, plus it's a lot of work. So I've decided to not stitch everything, to just stitch around the edges of the 3 major sections. And I'm going to be adding some trim and other things to this. I don't have a ton of adhesive on there, but once I get all the stitching in place, I think everything will hold together quite well. So now I'm back from the sewing machine with a zigzag stitch all the way around, and the areas, the other corners there, are going to be covered up with the photo and the little chipboard pieces and different things like that to hold everything down. I'm arranging my chipboard pieces, mostly by color. I had a couple that had sort of the ends sliced off of them. They were like the pieces you punch out of the letter D or something like that, and those are the ones I put on the outside edges. And I've got several right together there with the watercolor, and I try moving them around, but it doesn't work. It's more important that the color separate them than the style. So if I have several of the same style together, I can live with that as long as the colors are separated out. Some of them have a sticky back, a peel-off sticky back, but that's not going to be enough over top of the paper and the stitching, so I'm adding some Tombow glue. And it would have been better if I'd pulled the sticky stuff off before I painted them, because once you paint something that has a peel-off layer on the back, it's hard to get that layer off. You can do it, it's just a little more trouble. All right, those are in place, and I'm ready for my stamped embellishments at the top. Trying to decide on a size to cut them out. I'm still using the Creative Memories cutting system as long as my blades hold out. That system's not available anymore, so I'm going to use it as long as I can. Using archival ink, so I'll be able to color these. My first go here, I'm working with the green cutter, which is the medium size, so I could have a mat around it. Doesn't work out so hot. I cut off the bunny's ears. So I'm going to have to restamp him and cut him in such a way that I won't be able to cut a mat that is larger than the images. What I'm going to have to do is cut my mat the same size and offset it a little bit. We'll see that in just a moment. I stamped 3 images, and then I'm going to color these the variety of Stampin' Up! Markers. You could use Copics, of course, whatever kind of markers you had. Giving my bunny some pink ears, and then just dividing the colors up amongst all of the different images. And I'm going to move these off to the side for a minute because I'd like to put some mist on. Originally I was going to do white mist when I had a darker background, but since I didn't do that, I've experimented with some yellow and a mist called Honor Society. That's a really good color, and both of those work. I also had a Heidi Swapp mist that didn't turn out to be quite the right color. I'll do this off camera, but let me show you how I'll go about doing it. I'll just take the sprayer out of the bottle and then use it to add droplets to my page. I do this in a box over to the side, and I don't have a good way to film it. The box doesn't really fit under my camera. Now the mats for these stamped images are actually the same size as the stamped image itself. I'm just going to offset them a little bit so that they peek out at the top, and they're cut out of cardstock. And I have my mist scattered around there, and we're ready for just a few final touches. There's going to be some journaling at the top, and I know I want to add a little bit more trim to bring that either at the top or the bottom or both. I finally decided that the top is where it really needs to be. I'm sorry that's off camera, but you'll see it here in a few minutes. I also decided I would add a little bit of embellishment to those eggs. And what I'm doing to the eggs is using rub-ons. This is a great use for rub-ons. These are Christy Tomlinson's rub-ons. I bought them at 2 Peas in a Bucket. And if you've ever had rub-ons that didn't come off very well and didn't stick to things, this is not them. These things stick beautifully. They stick so good that you have to be careful. You'll end up with rub-ons where you didn't want them to be. But they come off the paper great. So I just decorated a couple of my eggs. Didn't get carried away for a change. I just did a couple. And now I'm doing the date using the date roller, and I always like to do this with markers, or typically do it with markers, because you can get everything colored good there, and if you sort of roll the stamp a little bit, it will get your date in place. Now I felt like with a band I needed a little something sort of hanging off the edge somewhere so it's not quite so straight, and I'm using some stick pins from Little Yellow Bicycle. These are a newer version of stick pin. I don't know that they have them for specific collections. They just come out with some different ones in different colors. I tried tying this ribbon here in a bow, and as you'll see in a minute, I really don't like that. It doesn't look good. So I'm going to end up just looping it around that stick pin on the left, and the one on the right I'm not going to put anything on. I don't feel like it really needs it. This is just some inexpensive ribbon from Michaels I've had for a really long time. I'll add a little extra glue to that and trim off the ends, and that'll be a nice little touch there. And now we have our page completed. So looking at the sketch, follows the sketch really closely. I didn't end up deviating much other than adding those little stick pins. And I didn't really find I needed very much at the bottom either. I've got my misting there, and the bottom had so much mist it really didn't need any extra embellishment. My row of eggs, if you will, dictated the width of everything. Just a few little extra embellishments. Thank you for watching today, and I'm going to show you some close-ups here of the layout. Be sure and check out my blog for more information.